Welcome to another episode of Exploring Possibilities. I'm your host, Cheryl Sitz, the founder of Journey of Possibilities. And week after week right here, I get to have the most interesting conversations on the planet. And we will get started with our next show right after a word with Mario Rosales. You know, Mario of Tech Life Balance has helped me learn how to broadcast independently. He's helped me create journeyofpossibilities.com and so much more. Mario, you've worked with Fortune 500s to solopreneurs and everything in between. How can you help our listeners?
Well, thank you, Cheryl. The easiest way I can explain it is that my skill set comes in understanding the industries I work with, especially for your audience that it deals with different types of energy work, shamanic work, coaches, or
we have some star seeds that listen.
Star seeds too. So I can speak galactic also. So I can give you an approach of however it is because I understand what you're talking about. How many times have you heard an IT person talk to you and they're talking to you in IT speak? I don't do that, as you well know, Cheryl. I can actually talk your language.
That, and you blend some really serious skills when it comes to technology, and you make it seem simple, and you help us find our way to manage it on our own, which is huge.
And that's one of the things I believe, just like when I started in this field, it's that I learned to empower myself, and I want to do the same thing with technology because I see so many people giving away their skills by paying for somebody else. And you know, some of this work can be done by yourself if you want to do that. And I can show people doing that.
Yeah, blogs, websites, social media, videos, you name it. Mario's your guy. And how do they find you?
They can go visit my online magazine that I'm starting to ramp up, techlifebalance.net. Or if you just want to know about me, MarioRosales.net. Feel free to reach out and I will speak in your language.
Who are you? Why are you here? What wonders and opportunities await you beyond physical death? What happened millennia ago to create the damaged earth and fractured societies you see around you? Empowering, enlightening, internationally acclaimed, the Joseph Communications books offer answers to these questions. Spiritual, concise, contemporary, non-denominational, the communications originate from Joseph, a highly evolved discarnate spirit concerned for you and the future of the planet and its peoples. The words of Joseph and his soul group give you the power to bring light and change into your own life and the lives of others and to restore the earth. Available in paperback, ebook, and audiobook formats, the communications can be ordered today at www.thejosephcommunications.com and also from Amazon and other major booksellers. All proceeds are used for further publishing and advertising and to make the communications available worldwide.
I recently packaged a brand new audio program for you called Remember Who You Are. It's designed to help you come home to yourself with loving compassion, live in conversation with spirit to get your own answers to the challenges and big questions in life, and become a conscious creator of the life you really want. Right now, this program is available at the introductory price of just $33.33. So what do you think? Are you ready to live with more wisdom, power, and truth in your daily life and remember who you are? Check it out at journeyofpossibilities.com. Now for today's guest. For over 20 years, Dan Phillips and his wife Marcia have run the Phoenix Commotion. Now this is a really fabulous business model. They use recycled materials to build affordable houses for underserved populations using unskilled workers. Again, what is that? They train up a workforce to build houses using recycled materials for people that might not otherwise be able to own homes. It's fabulous. Mario and I got to go check this out right here in Huntsville, Texas, and meet with Dan and Marcia. He agreed to join us today. So you can check out the blog that I'll have tagged on this show for pictures. I know you're going to want to see these, or visit their website at phoenixcommotion.com. How are you today, Dan?
Fine, thanks, Cheryl.
I'm so glad that you're here with us. And I know you have a busy day because you actually have a closing today. So we will wrap this up promptly for you.
Well, thank you.
So tell me how in the world you got started with all of this brilliant business model. Were you just in construction and said this can be done a better way, or what did that look like for you?
Well, I spent the better part of my adult life as a dance teacher, and everybody wants to be a builder, and I'm no exception. And I had just never lost track of that fantasy. And about 20 years ago, I thought, oh dear, if I'm going to be a builder, I better get busy. So I'd always suspected that you could build an entire house out of what went into the landfill. And sure enough, it's true. The average waste stream contains 20 to 40% usable building materials. And it strikes me as being a little bit piggy to be burying these materials that build a small-scale house when we have these little families that would do anything to own their own home, any home. So my wife and I set out to do that and prove that indeed you could make a reasonable living building for the poor using recycled materials and unskilled labor. And that's possible.
So do you live next to a landfill? How do you keep track of all these materials? How does this actually flow for you?
Once things reach the landfill, it's too late. Landfills do not allow scavenging anymore because of liability, and municipal lawsuits go on forever. So they just said no scavenging. So you have to catch it before it goes to the landfill. But that's not really hard. You just simply put out the word. You talk to especially wholesalers if they have any returns that are damaged or over orders or mismatches or calls that end up in the back of their warehouse. They're happy to give those to you. And they're very happy to give them to you because they don't have to pay tipping fees at the landfill. Let's send it to them. So I get a lot of stuff. From lumber to tile to granite to mirror, I mean, you name it, whatever is in the building industry is available to me. And it's really primarily just a question of being willing to use it.
Well, we were so privileged to be able to see the Hat House and the Boot House, and those are just works of art. Not only is it possible to use these materials, but you built something that's much lovelier than the standard home that people are seeing on the market now. I mean, it's really got character and personality. How do you get the inspiration for these designs and things that you do?
Well, everybody has ideas, and generally speaking, I build from the ground up, and the design grows out of the materials that I have. But that doesn't mean you're limited in terms of design. You can design a house that looks like a hat or one that looks like a boot. In this case, it was Ambassador Global Group, which is a philanthropic organization that have been friends for a long time, that funded the whole project, or both projects. And they try to empower artists and art worldwide. And they rent to artists below market rates, just in terms of that mission.
How does this work with the homeowners associations that can be kind of picky about, we don't want a house that looks like a hat in our subdivision or whatever? Like, do you get much kickback from those guys or pushback in terms of not wanting you to do what you want to do?
Well, I generally avoid subdivisions that have homeowners associations. Generally, I go into the deteriorated neighborhoods where they, first of all, need housing. Second of all, they don't have an HOA. And third of all the property prices are a little bit cheaper. And so I just avoid going into subdivisions that have deed restrictions. And in the case of the Boot and the Hat, I am in a subdivision, but it is one that was put together, organized in the 50s and 60s. And they specify that a single-story house has to be at least 900 square feet. And a two-story house has to be at least 1,600 square feet. So we made them single-story houses. After all, if you have a 900 square foot boot, it's about 3 miles tall. So reduce the size of the boot and add an adjoining building to flesh out the required square footage. And in the case of the Hat, both houses are exactly 900 square feet.
How do you see this moving forward? It's such brilliance to me to solve so many problems in one building model. And obviously there's a lot of interest. You're asked to speak all over the place about this. How do you see us getting out of the box and moving forward into more sustainable housing? You're quite a brilliant visionary. You're not just over here making these creative houses for people out in the sticks. Certainly you have some ideas about how we could move forward as a civilization here in the United States in the more developed areas with our housing. How do you see that looking? What would you like for people to consider moving forward that might help us embrace what you do?
Well, this build model, it's a design build model, not an architectural model. And the idea is that you make design decisions as you build. And that's not the way the building industry is set up right now. Right now, they're set up with the architect develops the plans, creates 16 copies, hands a copy out to all the various vendors. They know exactly what to do, and they know when they're right and when they're wrong. If it doesn't look like the plan, you're wrong. Whereas in a design build model, you think, I'd like to have a window right there. Powy, window. That's easy. But it's unlikely this will be mainstream anytime soon because we have so many materials available at low-cost prices. And so it's just much more efficient to have an architectural model. But there needs to be at least a cameo visibility in this century of this model. It'll never be mainstream. I won't be saving the world anytime soon. But one person can make an awful lot of noise in one lifetime, and that's what I'm doing. So whenever I get a little bit of press, I hear from people all over the world. Americans maybe have invented excess, but the problem of waste is worldwide. And every third world country exploits this model completely because they don't have a choice. They build whatever they have. Whereas in industrialized countries, we have a sizable industrial complex that feeds the building industry standardized materials, makes it quick, efficient, and fairly cheap. One of the reasons that I'm able to come out is that my model includes an educational component. That is, I hire these unskilled laborers, and they only get minimum wage, but they get a fire hose of information. And as soon as they get enough skill, marketable skill, I push them out the door to a higher paying job and say next. So I've got a low cost labor force, and using recycled materials takes a little bit more time. But when 60 to 80% of the materials are free and you have a low cost labor force, the model works out.
Yes, and I loved what you said. I think it was in your TED Talk that you gave that's on your website where you talked about all you have to do is take these materials and create a pattern where you can repeat the materials and all of a sudden a beautiful design emerges. And I've seen some of that in your building. So can you speak a little more to that?
Well, I'm not building art houses. What I'm doing is building houses using the same processes that artists use. That is, repetition creates pattern. Gestalt psychology emphasizes recognition of pattern over parts that comprise a pattern. We all have these deeper sensibilities and instincts. We just don't have the nerve to use them. So, when we're first trying to learn how to walk, we pull ourselves up on the coffee table and risk a step, bam, fall, tears. So we try it again, 2 steps this time, bam, fall, tears. Eventually we got it. But in the meantime, we learned about gravity. Going up takes time and is difficult. Down is easy and dangerous. A lot of up or a lot of down is dramatic. Well, if I asked you, which is heavier, ding or dong, dark brown or powder blue, the space in the attic or the space in the cellar, since those things don't have any real mass, how is it that we answer dong, dark brown, and cellar? Well, it's our sense of gravity that informs those things. Our experience with gravity informs our sense of color, space, shape, balance, sound, is informed by gravity. All we have to do is access that deeper sensibility. Every event in the world, every visual event and every kinetic event has a signature rhythm and dynamic. A cloudscape is different than a treescape. A treescape is different than Phantom Street in downtown Houston at rush hour. Those are different dynamics. You recognize that. Now I'm going to give you the same material, same information without the rhythm. Flattens that out. So every teacher in the world recognizes the rhythm and dynamic of a shouting match that's going to lead to a fist fight, even though it's around the corner in the hallway. Oops, gotta go. Oops. So all these rhythms, we're sensitive to the rhythms of life. The rhythm and dynamic of a treescape, of a shouting match, of traffic, of a cloudscape, of a rainstorm. We are sensitive to those things. We can take those rhythms and embed them in our repetitions of materials. So repetition creates pattern, yes, but it doesn't have to be perfectly square. It can have organic qualities and shapes. And so I exploit that completely. If I asked you, would you rather scrape your knee on a satin sheet or on asphalt? You don't have to get out the manual on knee scraping and go, ooh, satin sheet, I see. Ooh, asphalt, ooh. We feel those textures instantly just by looking at them. And so we can go with aggressive textures, refined textures, repetitive textures. Those are the principles of art and design that are buried in all of us. All we have to do is access those deeper sensibilities.
I would call that process art. So I would kind of circle back to what you said and say, yeah, I think you are building art as well as function.
Well, that would have to be your assessment. Simply building houses using materials with the same processes that all of us have access to. And generally speaking, those processes are mostly utilized in art, but everywhere else.
And in nature, yes, absolutely. You're aligning the house with the nature that you're creating it in, and I think that's wonderful.
Absolutely. And there are a lot of people who don't hesitate to experiment in the kitchen. Not everybody follows a recipe. They go, this is good. I'll add a little bit more. Let's add a little bit more of that. Oh, that's good. And before long, you have this masterpiece. You don't know what it is. You don't know how to repeat it because you evolved as you created it. And a lot of people do that in the kitchen. They don't have the nerve to do that with building materials, but it's the same process.
On your website, you mentioned that you'd really like this to be a model that you can go then and speak in other areas, and other people will pick up this model within their local communities and move it forward. Have you seen any examples of that happening so far? Has anyone done this with you yet?
Indeed, it has happened. I've launched some of these workers that have become builders. One lady who was just a sponge, she just absorbed everything, and is now a builder in Houston using recycled materials. Probably, I'd say, a dozen folks have gone into the building trades in one capacity or another, maybe not having a building company, but a remodeling company, or building their own homes. And so it's working, but it takes a lot of nerve, and you have to be capitalized to a certain point. Otherwise, you don't quite make it. Unfortunately, money does play a role in all this. You don't have to have a lot of money, but you do have to have some. And you have to have a sympathetic banker.
So how has it been for you and your wife? You shared with me just before we began that you're about to reach your 50 years together. What a fabulous length of marriage. How has it been for the two of you to make this shift now into this construction?
Well, I've always supported her. She's always supported me. And when I said, Marcia, I think what we ought to do is wipe out our savings, mortgage our own house, build houses out of trash, and we'll only hire people who don't have a clue what we're doing, and we'll sell people who have credit. Well, that's not your best building model, but we're still married, and she's right there with me, and she vets a lot of my decisions, has ideas of her own. She's the only one I can trust because, I'll ask somebody, what do you think if we put CDs on the wall? What do you think? And they'll go, yeah, okay. Yeah, that would be a great idea. Well, you know that they're thinking, boy, this guy's a lunatic. But Marcia goes, yeah, oh, that'd be fun. Let's try that. Or she'll say, no, Dan, nope, that's not going to work. And so I trust her, and she is honest with me. One of the very few people I can trust.
That's magnificent. So how do you get inspiration for your ideas? How do these materials come to you? You mentioned that sometimes it's overstock and overages that people can donate to you. And so is that it? Like you end up with 100 CDs and go, oh, okay, that looks like a wall covering. How does this happen for you? What's your process look like?
That's the way that works. You get these materials, you have a big pile of wine corks and go, I wonder what we could do with wine corks. And as it turns out, you can make a dandy floor. And when you price cork flooring in Architectural Digest, get your checkbook ready. But wine corks are free. Plus, it's great reading material on the floor, and you get bragging rights. You can see that's my imported Mediterranean oak floor. It was on the Mediterranean oak. And it's like a Dr. Scholl's floor. So you play with those things. I've used hickory nut, chicken eggs, broken tile, glass, mirror, bottle, there's all kinds of stuff. And I must pass muster with all the building code inspections, or scheduled inspections. Early on, inspectors would come by 4 times a week. Oh, just in my neighborhood, thought we'd stop in and say hello. Right. They wanted to find out what was going on because they're accountable too. Now, I don't hear from inspectors unless I call in for a scheduled inspection, or they're legitimately in the neighborhood and say, we haven't talked to Dan for a while, let's stop in and say hello. And that's what they do. They stop in and say hello. And so they are completely supportive. I'll have an inspector give me a call and say, Dan, there's this project over here. They're about ready to throw a half a bundle of 2x4s in the dumpster. And they said they'd be willing to give them to you if you want. Well, thank you. Thank you. Because I don't get around to those projects, but the inspectors do. And they're very supportive, and I don't want them to overlook any violation that they see, nor do I try to hide anything. If that happens, then other folks who might otherwise do this go, oh, he can do that because he's allowed to cheat. Well, I don't cheat. Everything is in broad daylight.
So what are some of your projects that we might have seen or heard about, or what are you excited to share with us that you've done that we could check out?
Well, I've got a lot of pictures on my website. I always wanted to build a tree house, and there was a lot that surfaced that had a magnificent tree on it. It was an Osage orange tree. Down here it's known as bodark. It's actually wadark. It's that tree with the big green nubby apples. It has a male and a female of the species. The female has big old long horns. No surprise there. And it was used as a hedgerow for cordoning cattle and so forth. Well, the conspicuous thing about this tree and its wood is that the wood doesn't rot and termites don't eat it. So I built a tree house in a bodark tree, and even if the tree dies, it's still as healthy as when I first built it 10 years ago. Even if the tree dies, it'll still be there for another 75 years because the wood doesn't rot and termites don't eat the wood.
Why are we not using more of this wood? It sounds like fabulous building material.
Bodark outperforms any wood in the country. The problem is it's the most undisciplined tree you've ever seen. It wraps around and curls and bends, and so you can't really mill it into lumber. You either have to use the branches as they are, which are very organic and lovely, but the building industry wants planks. They want 2x4, 2x6, 2x8. They don't want branches. And in fact, if you mention to a framer who's short one 2x4, well, shoot, why don't you just use that sapling over there instead of a 2x4? He'd look at you like you're from another planet. That's not what you do in the building industry.
Have you considered writing anything about tips for the average homeowner to be able to renovate their home with some of the things that you do, or is that not your thing?
I have a number of articles on my website. Some are how-to, some are just little jabs at how we live. And I do have about 12 books underway, and they're all masterpieces. The problem here is I just have to finish them. Right.
Yeah, it seems like you have a lot that you can teach us about. I'm just thinking that many people that listen to this show will be homeowners and think, wow, I could at least update something in my house using some of these principles, or do a room this way, or add on a room, or create a storage. There's so many ways that we could bring some of these principles to life in our own homes.
And, it's so easy. I don't use carpet. It's kind of like walking on dirty socks in my mind, and it's not sustainable. Mm-hmm. But if you want to get rid of a carpet, and you have a plywood floor or even a concrete floor, you can put down a paper mache floor. And the world of design in paper is absolutely at our feet. We can use anything. I wallpapered a kitchen in recipes and pictures of food from Gourmet magazine. I did another wall with sheet music of love songs from the 1920s. Paper mache floors are very, very functional. And the world of design is absolutely at your feet, literally. And you can get the Girl Scouts involved. That's easy. Everybody knows how to do paper mache. And I've got a how-to on my website there. You can make it formal. You can glue down heartthrobs onto the floor. So that's one thing you could do. You could start collecting wine corks and put down a wine cork floor. As it turns out, Specs, which is a purveyor of upper-end spirits and gourmet foods in Houston, gave me an 18-liter load of wine corks.
Wow.
Do you know how many wine corks that is?
That's a lot of wine corks.
A lot of wine corks. But I sided a house with wine corks. You can do wine cork floors. You can cover the wall with wine corks. They don't just have to be trivets or something that you use for fishing. Corks are very useful.
It seems like it's just for us to get inspired, right? Because we are so used to the same old. You're a breath of fresh air. You're an inspiration to think outside the box and come up with new ways to decorate our house that isn't just about buying a picture and hanging it on the wall.
Oh, thank you.
I love it. Well, you obviously are a messenger for us in these times. Not only are you having fun being the builder now and showing us how much is possible, training up a workforce, creating housing for people that couldn't afford it. Where did that piece come from? Where did your passion for housing those who couldn't afford housing come from?
Well, it just seems like if you're going to have the possibility of building cheap houses, then we ought to try to target underserved populations, single parents, low-income families, artists, and you still come out. There's still room there for you to make a living. And also, middle-class cravings require carpet, vinyl, dishwasher, trash compactor, drywall on the walls. And so these houses don't have a dishwasher. They don't have a garbage disposal. No drywall. And in my mind, if these little families don't have the discipline to wash their own dishes, maybe they don't deserve dishes. And so this doesn't cater to middle class and above cravings. Everybody wants a 2-car garage, a BMW in the driveway. Rarely do you hear somebody say, I want my house to look like that house over there where the beaten up old pickup that smokes is sitting in the driveway and the windows don't match. Nobody says that because that's not what our cultural pressures are.
Well, you inspire. Your houses inspire. You inspire.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for all that you're doing. When people look back on you and what you've done in the communities that you've worked in and kind of the movement that you've started, how do you want to be remembered? What is the message you want people to say, he really made me think about this? What is your message that you feel like you're here to share?
Well, I want everybody to just take charge of who they are. More viruses infect our language than ever threatened our computers. And they manifest themselves in terms of cultural mindsets. And so the cultural mindset of food is, oh, you put that in your mouth. But if you look at the list of ingredients and it says dibubogazingaling added to preserve freshness, quite likely it's not fresh, and there's a better than average chance it's not completely food. Same way with housing. There are cultural pressures of what our houses should look like, all geometrical, all just snapped up with standardized materials and marketed designs. And we forget that we can take charge of our own lives and do whatever we want. And of course, you do have to follow the building codes, but that's easy. The only reason we have building codes is to protect the public health and safety. That's all the codes do. So if the house you build is safe, hazard-free, it passes inspection. That's it. And so most folks, if failure destroys you, you can't do this. And I fail every day, 10 times a day. Well, that didn't work. Let's try it. Well, shoot, that didn't work either. Let's try. Oh, look at this. This is going to work. And that's how it goes.
And your houses last, right? I mean, you're not just throwing something up to get a family by for a couple of years. Your houses are sustainable.
I'm trying to make them maintenance-free and sustainable. And if there was a lawn there when I bought the property, that's the only lawn that house gets. If there was no lawn, it doesn't get a lawn. It gets something else, maybe a victory garden, maybe a vegetable garden. And so I push people to really ponder who it is they really are and what they really need, which is shelter and safety.
As a homeowner, that maintenance free is sounding pretty good to me, because I bought one of those nice brand new houses that every 10 years you pretty much need a brand new house again. So maintenance free sounds like a nice model to me.
Well, every house needs maintenance, mine included. But I try to stay away from paint. I do use paint, but not very much. No carpet. I have used carpet, but that was 18 years ago. I don't use carpet anymore. And I get some pretty exotic materials. One time I got 7 18-footer loads of tile, and not just any tile. Marfell cream, Tuscan travertine, imported granite, marble, vitrified china, raccoon, really wonderful. Not even the beautiful people can afford these. And they go into these recycled houses for underserved populations.
That's wonderful. Well, Dan, thank you so much for spending time with us today. You're up to some amazing stuff right there in Huntsville, Texas, and traveling around. If someone wants to book you for a presentation, you're happy to come speak for them, correct, on what you do? And
just go to my website and set up a speaking engagement.
Perfect. And do you have a parting thought you'd like to leave us with today?
Well, just celebrate humanity and celebrate who you are, and don't let the marketplace push you around.
That's great advice. Thank you so much for that. Okay, once again, the website where they can find all of your information is phoenixcommotion.com. Thank you so much, Dan. And I hope you've enjoyed the show today on Exploring Possibilities. Let us know what you think. Drop me a line, info@journeyofpossibilities.com. And we'll see you next week on Exploring Possibilities.